The Far Quest, The Chronicles of Cursoon, Book 1, by R. Jason Lynch, copyright 2016, EMP 2023, all rights reserved. Chapter 23. The Nightmare Unfolds. Like so many times before, Livid's fearful gray eyes beheld every horrid detail of her nightmare. She knew it was only a dream, and yet she did not have the power to awake. Again, the gray shepherdess found herself in utter darkness. She felt the waves carrying her forward. She gasped and sputtered. She reached for any handhold only to find none. Then the lightning flashed from deep within the billowing clouds of the tempest. This pale light shattered the night and parted every shadow. As before, she saw the black tower standing defiantly in the midst of the furious sea. Overhead, the storm seemed to stir the angry swells like one would a boiling cauldron. Thus, the massive dark waves crashed against the glossy black spire with such force that white spray misted upwards almost to the pinnacle of its lofty battlements. However, it seemed nothing could cause the monolithic structure to tremble. Upon the uttermost stonework of the glistening watchtower there were many strange markings, and decorating its smooth stone floor there was a silver crescent moon. In the midst of this moon's arc there was a round, shallow pool of clear water. As Livid took in these new details, a beautiful lady came up the tower's inner staircase. The woman's skin was a golden color, and her long red and gold hair shimmered as the wind whipped it about. Her eyes were like the hue of a beautiful tropical sea, and yet they seemed full of anxiousness, darting back and forth as she stepped toward the pool. Though her expression was full of fear, her beauty was not in the least diminished. The lovely woman wore a long pearl-white gown, which was cut down its sides. The two flowing panels of the dress were kept together by many strings of pearls, so that the golden skin of her body could only slightly be seen through the narrow opening. There were also white pearls and small spiral seashells mingled into the rich fabric of its delicate lace-like embroideries. Upon the woman's fair brow there sat a silver crown. It was wrought to resemble scallop shells fastened together. With a rumble of distant thunder, there came another woman's smooth voice inquiring of the beautiful golden-skinned lady,
"What do you seek here at the Tower of the New Moon, my queen?"
The golden woman gave a start at the sudden question, but then she hastily gave answer with downward-turned eyes.
"I must be freed of my burden,"
she said as her hand unconsciously caressed her slightly swollen stomach.
"I will help you cast aside this troublesome thing,"
the silken voice replied. With those words, the woman in black robes stepped out, and with a graceful gliding motion, she moved toward the golden lady. Her deep hood was over her head as before, so that it hid her pasty white face and black eyes. However, Livid knew all too well that it was the same vile woman she had seen before in her earlier dream. The Grey Witch took the beautiful queen by her slender hand and led her to the small pool. Her colorless skin contrasted sharply against the warm hue of the other. Following the witch's gestured directions, the golden woman stepped down into the pool and stood waiting. From somewhere deep within the many folds of her black robe, the cruel witch took out a small flask made from mother-of-pearl. Then, with the other hand, she made a large silver chalice appear as though from nowhere. She held the ornate drinking cup out to the fair golden lady.
"As you know, my queen, I am not permitted to touch the water since I am a priestess of the new moon,"
the pale-faced woman explained.
"Thus, you must take the chalice, fill it from the pool, and then hold it out to me."
When the golden lady had done as she was instructed, the colorless woman let a single black drop from her flask fall into the outheld cup. Without being stirred, the dark drop gradually mingled into the clear water, turning it crimson.
"This will cause your burden to come before its time, but remember, my queen, you must pass the thing to me as soon as it has come."
The witch's face grew stern as she gave her warning.
Do not look at it and thereby delay, for it is written in the law that it must fall before its first breath.
The beautiful woman nodded nervously and slowly put the chalice to her lovely red lips. After slowly draining the whole cup, she set the chalice down gently upon the pool's edge. At first, there seemed to be no effect. However, moments later, the woman suddenly convulsed and cried out in pain.
Be brave, my queen, for this shall pass soon enough.
The Grey Priestess counseled callously, with no signs of compassion in her cold, expressionless words. Though she was still hidden from the other woman by her deep hood, Livid could somehow see the contemptuous look that passed across the Grey Witch's colorless face. After the Golden Lady gave another cry, the clear pool filled with blood. Wincing with pain, the woman brought a tiny, perfectly formed girl child up from the water. The infant was in every way like her mother, but without gazing at the baby, the fair lady quickly gave the golden-skinned child to the Grey Priestess. The little girl was so small that the witch could easily hold her in only one of her thin, colorless hands. The pale priestess of the moon snatched up the golden-skinned child and quickly wrapped her in a sable-colored cloth. With this done, she hurried to the edge of the tower. Leaning over the waist-high wall of the battlements, the Grey Witch held the bundled child out over the waiting waves. Hoping to stop the witch from dropping the baby, Livid rushed forward. Balling up her gray fists, she attempted to beat upon the cloaked woman like one would beat upon a locked door. However, to Livid, it felt like she was striking nothing more than empty curtains. All the while, the witch never seemed to notice. With cold black eyes, she uncovered the golden baby and whispered strange words over her. Livid continued her struggle. She punched and even kicked the billowing black robe until she became tangled in it. Fear swelled within her heart. It was just like when the waves of the sea fought to swallow her. The thoughts of stopping the Grey Witch fled from her mind. Now she kicked and thrashed about, seeking only freedom from the waves of black cloth. Suddenly thrusting herself forward, Livid burst out of the suffocating folds of fabric, only to find the witch gazing at her with open contempt. For a second, the Grey Shepherdess was startled into inaction as she looked back into the other woman's black eyes. In that moment, the witch grabbed Livid by her rust-colored tunic and pushed her over the edge of the low wall. Down the Grey Shepherdess plummeted, and as she fell, she tumbled, head over foot, catching only glimpses of the crashing waves that eagerly waited to swallow her anew. With a start, the shepherdess jerked awake. Her gray brow was dampened by sweat, and silent tears filled her colorless eyes. Pushing the dream out of her mind, Livid sat up and checked to make sure her friends were all safe. Glancing about their camp, she found the sheep were still sleeping peacefully, and Jaunty was cuddled up to Dawdle's warm neck. The donkey's rhythmic snoring did not seem to bother him in the least. The road to Mudbrick lay just outside their camp, but she saw no signs that anyone was passing by in the night. When she was satisfied that all was well, the Grey Maiden laid back against Dawdle's round belly and slowly closed her eyes. She thought about the golden woman for a moment, but she quickly pushed the dream back out of her mind. After a while, Livid's breathing became rhythmic once more as she drifted off into a dreamless sleep. For many minutes, the campsite was silent, but for the crackle of the fire and the snoring of the donkey. However, when it was certain that the shepherdess was no longer awake, the mummy-like figure unfroze and scurried away, back into the shadows.
Rot and ruin.
The creature hissed out a curse.
She woke before Rue's dagger could open her throat. She is dangerous.
It answered itself.
Dearest must be careful.